So how does memory form? We have episodic memory and we have semantic memory. Episodic memory is one exposure, and that is, call it, burnt into your mind, but that is just a snapshot in time. Semantic memory is I need 3 or more of these episodic memories, and that memory will exist completely independently and create your own view of that particular brand. So what you want is semantic memory. You know it, you trust it, and you like it, and you'll pay a premium for it.
I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't hire you. I would totally like want to gut check all my creative work through you. Do you do that?
But that's what we do. And that's what we want to become a creative agency's best friend.
You're listening to the Genius Scouts podcast with Justin Oberman and Aaron Zakowski. Join us each week as we bring you exclusive conversations with the business leaders and innovators you need to know about, sharing the secrets that fuel their success and power their personal brands. Let's dive in.
So, Aaron, we have an incredible special guest today, someone whose story cuts deeper than just business and branding and marketing, although he is incredible at all those things. And the story starts when he was just 18 while studying industrial design at, Jono, you're going to have to, what is it?
RMIT. Yes.
RMIT in Melbourne. Jonathan Rolley, our guest, was jolted awake at 2 a.m. by a splitting headache. The pain led to a diagnosis that no teenager or young adult should have to face, which was a brain tumor about the size of a large grape lodged deep in his third ventricle. I have no idea what that means, but those are the facts. He was rushed into life-threatening surgery, and in that moment, for him, everything changed. Facing mortality that young didn't just change Jonathan's path, it reshaped his perspective. It gave him the kind of clarity that most people would spend decades chasing. The knowledge that time is short and doing meaningful work isn't optional, it's essential. This led to a fascination with the brain and how it works and how it is that human beings make decisions, and which ultimately led him down the path of eventually founding Direct Response Media, which he has now turned into Undivided, which is a creative, well, how would you put it, Jono?
How would I put it? Undivided, we see division happening within advertising marketing and a lot of silos that are evolving, and potentially agendas that sit behind those silos as well. So really what we're bridging is creative and media. How do we bring those really close together and work more effectively? And then we're looking with,
Go on, sorry.
You're right. So it's dissolving the silos and the division that happens. And ultimately it's how do we become more effective with marketing advertising dollars?
So you want to be called a media agency, or do you want to be called an agency or what?
We're very much a media agency at our heart. We do have a couple of proprietary and bespoke products that help us do a much better job. So one of those is memory. So understanding, especially if you're looking at brand, how do we embed memory? How do we encode memory?
So, but for the sake of the purpose to continue this introduction, I just wanted to make sure I have like a little note here, which is like, let's just ask Jono. So Undivided, which is a media agency, one of the largest in Australia, that's changing the way brands connect with real people. His work sits at the intersection of neuroscience, branding, and media, and the results basically speak for themselves. He's analyzed over 2,000 advertising campaigns alongside neuroscientists and creative directors. He's the creator of Media Pulse, a measurement system, you should like that, Aaron, that's driven 20% plus performance gains for more than 120 brands. He's developed the Unforgettable framework, which is 12 proven neuromarketing strategies that help brands break through the noise and stay top of mind. And he's the author of the upcoming book, Brands, Brains, and Behaviors, in which he talks about all of these things. Jonathan's mission is simple but powerful: to make brands unforgettable, and he does it by helping them bridge the gap between data, creativity, and what actually moves people. Jonathan, welcome to Genius Scouts. We're excited to have you here. And Aaron is finally happy to have somebody here that can also talk about all the boring performance marketing and data stuff.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us, Justin.
You're welcome. And thanks for diving in during that introduction so we can get some of those things like sort of straightened out, I want to begin by asking this. It seems like there's more to the story there. It feels like we skipped over a lot from you having the brain tumor to really getting interested into how the brain works, and then leading you to discover these things. Can you talk a little bit more about that, like what happened there?
Yeah, I'll try and give you the really short version. So I grew up as a really shy, very introverted kid from the country in Australia. There was a course I wanted to get into, which is industrial design. I worked really hard to get into that, and I thought my career was set. Had the brain tumor. That really reset my perspective on several different fronts. Had to have 12 months off before I resumed university. To go back to university, I had to get basically fund my own way. So I got a job in sales in a retailer, which is called Harvey Norman. So it's quite a large one in the electrical department. For anyone that knew me at the time, that was a huge disconnect. I was nervous. I was shy. I didn't enjoy selling. Was like the last thing anyone would assume I would be doing. And I was horrific at it. Somehow they gave me a job. It was a Christmas rush. They must have been really desperate. One thing I was really good at, though, was figuring things out and asking questions. So I worked incredibly hard. I read literally as many books as I could on the art of sales, influence, persuasion. And this felt like really big aha moments. Like I needed tools. I needed a methodology to influence and persuade because I didn't have one. I also needed to learn product, which gave me confidence. So I could see my confidence growing as the more I could learn both product and a methodology. So I managed in a relatively short amount of time to go from the worst performing salesperson in the team to one of the best. And I just niched. And again, that was kind of really interesting and really pivotal in terms of where I got to. So that led to a lot of human behavior psychology, and more so that led to neuroscience of how people decide. So what's the science of decision making? What's the science of influence and persuasion? Again, I want rigor. I want metrics. I want methodology. I don't like guesswork. So again, I was quite fortunate. I got a role at a Fortune 500 in marketing. I had several different roles. I ended up in radio. I knew nothing about advertising, but I wanted to work with more brands rather than going really deep with one. And one thing that was really interesting there at radio is, again, going back to my methodology, I wanted to go, who was the best strategists and planners from a media perspective, because I wanted to win and I wanted the brands that I was working with to win. And we landed that. But this was kind of a really critical piece in my journey, is that, I'd see a script from the creative director at the radio station and I'd read it and I'm like, this isn't going to sell anything. How is this going to work? I just can't see this moving product, moving service. And sure enough, it wouldn't work. So I had to go back and figure out, like, why is this piece of creative going to work? Why is it not going to work? Like, I needed some sort of rigor or methodology to at least increase our odds of winning. So that really cascaded my whole journey into understanding what's effective media, but then what message needs to be seeded at what stage to ensure that we're going to get outcomes. So there was kind of several key milestones, but the brain tumor was definitely the major catalyst of going on that journey.
Do you ever get a pushback on that? Because it's not often that a media company gets involved with creative.
And there's parts, I'd say half we are a creative advertising agency's best friend for coming up with concepts and looking at testing and what does that look like. And the other half really aren't that interested in looking at how do we measure creative performance, or especially looking at predictive analytics for brand, because they want creative freedom and they don't want anyone marking their homework. So it's literally 50-50.
So that's interesting. You've got people who come to you for creative and they say, oh, you've got this way you could actually measure the impact. And if what we're paying for and we're investing all these time and resources actually works. And then they say, yeah, but we don't want that. Just do it, and we don't care what the outcome is or what the impact is.
Yeah, so
seems quite silly.
It is, but I think if you're looking at agencies and agendas, and again, creative agencies without speaking out of school, like a lot of them are driven by awards and getting their name up because that really fuels more creative wins for them or client wins. So it's more how do they get attention and interest as well as doing a good job for client. Like, we really come from an effectiveness perspective in terms of what's going to drive ROI, and that's got to be business revenue or profit. That's our measurement first. So how do we do a really good job of that? So again, a lot of creative agencies love it and embrace it. Some don't because they don't want that rigor and they feel it takes away some of their creative license or some of their creative freedom.
Are you working generally with the brands themselves or with the agencies? Because I understand that agencies care about, the creative sport and the awards being won and all of that, but brands themselves should really, I would assume, only care about the outcome and the impact that it has on the long-term brand and revenue of the company.
Yeah. Like if you look at our name Undivided, it's when all three of us are working really, really well together. So we've got the brand that's really driving, product price and what that really means. You've got a creative agency that takes that, embraces it, and allows them to be really creative and cut through and create that message. And for us really to provide as counsel to give feedback and how do we increase and elevate some elements. And again, we've got a neuroanalysis platform that we look at, that review assets to see how do we tweak ads to make them more memorable. And there can be some small things, whether it's audio or just a couple of frame sequences that drop or decrease memory encoding. So again, we're not there to be the creative agency. We're there to enhance the creative impact.
So how do you, because again, like the intro, I had a little bit of a hard time almost describing what you do. And you and I have been back and forth. We've had tons of communication with each other. But you really seem to be kind of like at the intersection, right, of branding. Like it can get really confusing sometimes because you talk a lot like performance marketing, but then you also talk about branding and you talk about them all in like the same place. And then you're also putting like the neuroscience on top of it. So forget about from a creative perspective, from a media perspective, are you a brand awareness, like, are you a brand awareness guy? Are you a performance marketing guy? Where does the neuroscience fit into all of this? There's a lot going on here. Can you help me and help the listeners kind of like sift through this?
Yeah. So we came from a direct responsible performance background. So everything was ROI, and typically 100% of the budget had to deliver either leads or sales revenue. Brand really took a back seat. So that was us and that was our game. And that's where a lot of our metrics, when we started working with some other brands that had a blend between brand and performance budget, and they were split out. So questions were like, what is our optimal mix between brand and performance? How do we increase our brand impact with that investment? What does that look like? And then what we were seeing is those clients that did have a brand and performance specific, and that was split out with both budget and creative, they had the best results bar none. Like a lot of your performance only clients would hit ceilings, and they'll just hit that ceilings because brand really wasn't considered. It was just harvesting that demand that was in market right now, rather than doing anything and building any preference for tomorrow's client. So this is where we go.
Quickly, when you mentioned that you've got companies that were doing doing both, over what time frame do you judge that on?
Well, again, if you're looking at brand, a lot of people call it research or survey based to look at brand, going, okay, where are we now? What is our brand awareness? What's our brand salience? Like, what are those metrics? But that's all review mirror. So that's really important because you get to an understanding where you sit in market. But what you don't know is what's really driving that. Like, how do we what's contributing to that or not? And the biggest challenge with brand is it's usually you've got to hit and hope that it's going to do something in the future. And that's why it becomes a little bit immeasurable in many different ways. So you can kind of do whatever you want and it just falls into the brand bucket. Whereas for us, we knew the performance piece, but we wanted brand because when we saw, and a really interesting takeaway, if we were looking at some response metrics as well, working with some really large auto clients, a great brand ad outperformed all direct response ads. So this is for us going, how do we do really good and great brand? Because that lifts everything, including your direct response or performance channels.
So many questions there. Okay. Why? Okay. First of all, props to you for being a direct response and performance marketing, media company or oriented, and then seeing this and then just not dismissing it. Right. So first of all, props on you for seeing that. Because, it could be a very siloed, fragmented, the brand people and the direct response people like to poop on each other all the time. But why is it that you think, okay, you said two things. So I'll ask the first one. Why is it that the companies that had the the split between brand and direct response. So, why is it that the direct response was doing better? And also, like, what was the best split, right? I guess that people saw. And then the second question is why did those brand ads do better than the direct response ads?
Look, if you talk direct response, like that really talks to, depending on the market, it might be 1% to 3% of the market that are looking to buy now. And then you got to move them through a funnel pretty quickly and convert them through to revenue. If I have a strong, or I've got a liking, or call it the mere exposure effect, or some sort of affinity to a brand, and you're not even sure why, but you like that more and it's got preference and it's a really smooth journey through the sales funnel, the chances of me converting with that brand are much higher than someone that I've never heard of, but I might have had the first click on Google. So this is for us going, how do we increase our odds of someone actually converting through the funnel? And that really is brand. And I'll go back to Harvey Norman days of power of brand. Like I remember I thought I was getting quite good at sales. And I had this Japanese guy come through and he was talking about the type of camera he wanted. And then all of a sudden I gave him 2 products and I thought I had the deal. And he's like, no, put those back in the cabinet. I want that Sony right there. And I was just like, whoa, that's $150 more expensive. And it's actually not particularly, like, it's not a better product than the ones I've just shown you. And he's, I don't care. I always buy Sony because I've never been let down. And then all of a sudden I was just like, wow, what is this brand piece? Because I thought I could outsell everything. And I think if you look at that style of analogy, you go, if people have they like a particular brand, they feel familiar or safe with the brand, chances are they'll be more comfortable going in that direction rather than this unknown quantity in the performance or direct response space, because they're more trusted or associated. Trust sits there. So for me, it's not direct response. It's not brand. It's both. And they both work really, really well together. Now, why does great brand outperform direct response? Because it's not a hard sell. All they're doing is you love the brand, you're enticed by the brand. The price plays second fiddle to what you've actually been drawn to, which is, call it a very emotional drive rather than a rational drive. And a lot of direct response tries to hit emotional, but there's a lot of rational in there, value stacking and price points and discounting or whatever it may be in the direct response space. So yeah, great brand, which is really interesting, does outperform direct response. But in our world, we want to look at both. We want to harvest today's consumers that's looking to buy, but we also want to plant seeds for tomorrow's consumers so we can harvest those in the future.
How much does the medium shape the message here, though? Right? Because it seems like what you're saying is like there could also just be a lot of confusion with style. Like a lot of people say, oh, this is like a brand awareness type ad, or this is a direct response type ad. And you're basically saying like that really doesn't exist. Like the best ads are both, more or less.
Look, and there's spectrums. So if you've got a client and they don't have big budgets, they need revenue today. They don't have big brand budget because if they keep investing in brand, they're out of business. So they need revenue now. So some brands, if they're out on life, like it might be 90, 100% that is all direct response performance because they need revenue in today, and that's how they get their start in life. If you've got a bigger brand, it's about holding on to market share. It's brand, it's perception. Their brand budget could be 60, 70% because I just need to refresh memory structures and keep myself top of mind rather than actually this big new acquisition funnel. So again, it's a spectrum. In our experience, there's no hard and fast rules. Everything is a spectrum. And as much as humans want A and B, it's black or white. It's not. Everything is shades of gray, which is really, really difficult for most people to wrap their heads around because they want binary.
So you mentioned before, though, that good brand campaign can beat a good performance campaign. It sounds like even in the short run. So I guess my question would be, is there a formula or a methodology that you can take in which you can just do that all the time? Because a brand can be performance, even in the performance measurements or metrics. Well, then shouldn't we just do that all the time? What is it about those brand campaigns that could beat performance campaigns? Sounds like that's the holy grail. How do we just do more of that all the time and just that should be the only thing we do, it sounds like.
And a follow-up to that question is going to be, and so why don't more brands do it?
Oh, there's 2 things within this. A great brand campaign usually starts with a great marketing team. that have really got their product price and positioning sorted. So half of the heavy lift is done because they've got a problem that they solve that others, or they've got a competitive advantage or something you can really press on, or there's an insight or some research that allows you to have a specific angle. So again, you're looking at something that you've got that consumers really want to pay attention to. That's half of the lift. Just expecting an agency to create a great brand ad can be really challenging without either having that insight or research or the product that really helps solve a problem. Now, then, if you're looking at how do you create a great brand ad, it usually has quite a significant impact on the viewer, and we'll talk, say, video or audio or whatever it may be. It makes them feel something and it moves them. If you're looking at memory encoding, there's something that you really want. It's a chemical cascade or a shift of chemicals. So it might be something that has some high tension, but then it's resolved. Or if they're watching, and this is going back to your question around the environment, like what sort of environment are they actually consuming the media in? Like TikTok's really interesting now because it's a really high dopamine style environment. Everything's fast, everything's quick, but there's not this huge sort of big chemical shifts. It's more just like bang, bang, dopamine, 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 dopamine. So unless it's really engaging or quite different or something quite shocking, memory doesn't tend to form the same way. Same as TV. Like if I look at TV from a direct response, I want something that's low involvement watching, like off-peak TV that you're just kind of consuming. You're not particularly interested. It might be a rerun that you've seen a few times before, but this ad is actually quite interesting in context. I'm going to jump on my phone and do something right now. Whereas if I'm watching the Super Bowl and it's an ad that I don't need to do anything now with, chances are I'm not picking up the phone. I'm not going online. I'm not doing anything, but that's more brand.
It almost sounds like the best environment you described is late night as seen on TV infomercial products. You get boring TV without a whole lot of engagement, and then suddenly you can put in a good commercial with a call to action, and you've got to win.
I hope that there's people who are there's some of our listeners are like not in branding and marketing at all. Those that are in branding and marketing at all are probably just right now as overwhelmed as I am by the level of insights that are being dropped here. And this is something that Jono does really well. It's just like every answer is, because it's not so binary and everything is part of like, well, where are you? Where is your brand? Are you building the brand? Are you not doing, and I just don't know anybody that really has it like as down as you, Jono. Like, so I could throw these questions at you all day. Like I want to ask you, can you build a brand using direct response? Nothing but direct response. And I think the answer is yes. And the answer is yes. So, okay, how would you do that?
So again, if you're looking at how do you build a brand through direct response, this goes brand response style territory. So you've got the ingredients for a great direct response ad, but then what you will have is you go, how do you then build a brand? How do you actually be memorable within it? And I would actually call like Progressive, as in Progressive Direct Insurance Company, they are a brand response style ad. Most of their ads and commercials, especially if you rewind the clock 10, 15 years ago, they had a very particular message, a really strong offer and proposition, but they branded it really well. Now, what is brand? There's several things that over-index for memory. Number one is audio. Number two is character. They created a really compelling character in the way she dresses, had nostalgia in there, so it felt trusted. It was white. It was clean. There was lots of elements within that was brand response. They did brand really well. They were really, really consistent for a long period of time, which is the most powerful thing you can do for brand rather than changing the ad every 12 months. So again, there's definitely brand response, and that's that territory of gray between, well, we've got a direct response budget. We need to grow this thing. But how do we also seed brand in there to start building some favorable memory structures?
So is this where brands, brains, and behaviors comes in? Like, where does the neuroscience fit into this?
So the neuroscience, there's twofold for neuroscience. So if you're looking at, call it brands, a lot of the brand research goes back to consumer psychology or evolutionary style behavior. And that's really, really powerful. If you're looking at memory, which is what brand is, it's how do I embed memory in consumer. you take a lot of that evolutionary psychology and behavioral metrics, but you take it up another level to actually measure what's going on in someone's subconscious. Now, 95% of all decision is made in the subconscious. I want to measure that. I don't want gut feel. So if you're looking at survey system 2, that's very conscious. I want to measure subconscious with asset so I can optimize the asset for memory.
I mean, wasn't this sort of attempted before with like Dichter and Bernays and people like that who were trying to get to the subconscious of the ads? You know, like the famous story with Duncan Hines and the eggs and stuff like that. Is it that, except with now it's like science? It's not like psychoanalysis. Is that what it is?
There's two parts, and there's a lot to be learned to look at frameworks and what is effective, especially in psychology, at influence and persuasion. So that's really like if we're working with a creative shop, it's like, well, what's the framework? What's the structure of the ad? And what does that look like? And then there's the optimization of the asset. So that's the review. Okay, here's the asset that we've built, but how do we optimize that using neuroscience?
So you're saying basically neuroscience is you think you've cracked the code of finally measuring that one piece that people always claim can't be measured in terms of branding, right? Which is like the memory and is that what it is?
I think one of the biggest challenges with brand is there's a lot of guesswork up front, and there's a lot of trust, especially with creative partners. Going, I'm trusting you with really large budgets, and brand typically has the biggest budget for a lot of those larger brands. So there's a huge amount of trust going, I'm going to spend a couple of $1 million on this ad, creating and producing it. I'm going to spend a really large sum getting it to market. But that's all guesswork. How do you know this is going to be effective? Like, what's the rigor? How do you make sure this is going to be really effective? And there's a lot of measurement tools in there, especially in the neurospace, but a lot of them are biometrics. So they actually look at facial encoding, which doesn't have any indication to memory. You've got others which are worse, which are like literally prompts where they prompt you, what are you feeling right now? Like, oh, I'm feeling attractive. I'm feeling whatever that particular emotion they're trying to elicit. It's all prompted on screen, which is all system 2, which is your conscious mind, rational mind engaging with an ad, which is not the subconscious.
Can you explain just the system 1, system 2 thinking just very briefly?
Okay, so
before that, can we take another step even farther back real fast? Just I'm unclear still about how this measurement actually happens. Like Coca-Cola comes to you with a campaign and they say, okay, we've got this ad, we've got this budget, we're thinking about doing this stuff. We want you to figure out if this can, like, are you connecting sensors to people's heads and measuring them watch the advertising? Is that how this works?
So if you're looking at neuromarketing, there's 6 different levels to neuromarketing, starting at basic level, which is eye tracking and looking at where someone's attention is on screen. So that's sort of base level. You go all the way up, you go up to EEG and fMRI. So that's literally either someone having a brain scanner. We typically use EEG. So that is someone's helmet on someone's head in a controlled environment, and they'll be watching a couple of hours of TV or video. And within that will be ads that are embedded in that. And all we look is strip out that ad in that controlled environment. What actually happens to that consumer, ideally your prospect, and what is happening inside that consumer's subconscious as they're exposed to that ad.
And you're measuring that differently based on the platform that they're on. So somebody watching TV might be a different measurement than you said TikTok, where it's all dopamine after dopamine. And so therefore you could measure the impact by platform and ecosystem.
Correct. Yeah. So say if it was audio, if it was social, or if it was video, you'd want the contextual environment that it's going to be placed in.
Okay. Very cool.
And you have 12 versions of this. You have in your book, you have these 12, right? That you've sort of isolated.
So we've got 12 principles in our book, or 12 tactics as such. And again, they're looking at, if we're working with a creative partner, we'll want to know what the tactic is. And within those tactics, there's a formula and a structure to the ad. Now, what we don't want to do is remove creative license, but what we want to do, here's a brilliant idea. How do we make sure we've got all the elements that we've learned? So that gives our greatest chance of being effective from brand and or driving immediate response if I'm in market.
Got it. So some people like have this skill, right? They're like creative. They have like this intuition, and they're just kind of produce this type of thing all the time. But you have this sort of down to a science where you think that you can give these guidelines to like creative, and and say do these types of things, and you'll have the greatest probability of success. Because obviously there's no guarantees, right, in marketing. So, but like you'll have the greatest guarantee on a creative level.
So you'll have I'll talk an analogy, which is if you go to male female interaction, you'll have males that are really intuitive in terms of they're just really naturally good with girls. They don't even know what they're doing, but they're just phenomenal, and girls love them. They're naturals. They're really good. They're just that way inclined, and they find it hard to actually communicate what they're doing to be so effective. Then you've got the other guys that are really clueless, but they've learned and they've studied and they've really refined the craft, and they're great at teaching how do you be really effective. That's been my experience with creatives as well. You have these creatives that are so intuitive and they're so good at what they do. The work just flows out of them and it's so elegant. You're just like, I'm not changing a thing. We are good to go. And then you've got others that have really learned and studied the craft, and they leverage tactics or tools that they've learned throughout their journey.
So I think the best way for people to understand this is to see you apply this live. So you might have just heard some sounds in the background. I just emailed you a random TV commercial that someone sent me that they said that they liked. And I have, and I really had sort of no opinion on it. Now, granted, you were not in the room. You don't know what the brief is. You don't know a lot of other things about where they are, but I imagine that you can guess it. Take a look at it, and then and tell us what you think. All right. Thoughts?
In terms of effectiveness, I'd have big concerns. So this high production, this is big costs. I think it's Missy Elliott. Again, it comes across like a music clip. You can see the thought process that they've gone. We want to feature Windows. We've got a music clip. Let's have Missy, and we'll run all the way through. In terms of visuals, like they're really good at capturing and retaining retention. They've got some interesting things, like when the girl puts her hand on the window and it all sort of cascades into her hand. The trees, again, using some AI or some sort of augmented reality in the background with the trees. So they're constantly holding your attention. My biggest concern with this is your audience. My biggest concern is they're solely reliant on their brand at the end of the ad in the last 2 seconds. They don't even mention the name. It is just a visual logo. After spending so much time, you've got to retain attention for the entire time. You've got text that comes on screen as the music drops, and then you've just got this brand. I can't even recall the brand right now, whatever it is. In terms of the actual clip, phenomenal. If the brand was integrated to that clip all the way through, you have a classic and a home run. But because you haven't, I go, you've got a big miss there and huge risk that consumers not going to retain or recall that sponsoring brand.
See, what did I tell you, Aaron? It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So what is the neuroscience that's going on there?
So, well, if you're looking at neuroscience, there's some really, really nice elements in that. Like you've got humor embedded in that, which you've got the girl that was sitting there and then the dad comes in with the sort of dorky dad dance. Like that is what you'd have is a prediction break. So you thought something was going to happen. It changed that. So that's actually a prediction break. So it's something unexpected. And there was a few elements of prediction break in that visually, which was really nice. If you're looking at song, like that is really a nice beat. It's a theta rhythm beat. So if you're looking at embedding memory and favorite songs, it mimics our human circadian rhythm, which is amazing. It's just what you want. So there's a lot of things with beat and music really over indexes for memory encoding. So there's a lot of really nice elements. So I don't want to be too critical because the ad is like 90% there. I just would have loved the brand embedded deeper throughout rather than it reliant on I've created an epic music video, a really nice music video, hoping that someone's going to recall that little logo at the end of the clip.
Is this kind of what you mean when you say things like brands live in memory, not impressions? Like what do you mean by that? And how does that change like how we would build, say, like this campaign or
So
any
yeah,
campaign?
so if you're looking at memory really forms in high emotive environments as well. So if it makes me feel really good, if I'm watching something and all of a sudden this clip comes on, it makes me feel really good. This is you change in cascading chemicals. So I might have been a bit stressed, a bit overwhelmed. All of a sudden this comes in and it elevates and I'm starting feeling really good. Anything that's associated in that environment, I'll anchor and it will rub against it. So I start feeling really good as association with this particular creative and asset. So that's really positive. So I'm anchoring positive emotions to that particular ad or environment or characters which were in the clip.
So you've reviewed over 2,000 ad campaigns like this, right?
Yes.
In your book, and you talk about obviously the findings. The findings are obviously, a lot of it is in the books. At the end of the day, what separates a forgettable campaign from an unforgettable one?
What separates a forgettable an unforgettable? Look, an
Yeah.
unforgettable one is something that makes you feel something first and foremost, and the brand is really integrated and embedded throughout because that gives you the greatest chance of anchoring that feeling and association to that brand, and they're linked. Rather than going, I remember that particular ad or asset, it made me feel really good, but I actually can't remember the sponsoring brand.
Is that what the unforgettable framework is? Can you break that down?
Well, there's two parts to the unforgettable framework. The first is how do we create an ad that's going to be effective, and then how do we embed memory throughout? So there's.
Go on. Sorry.
You've got to have an ad that does something first, and then you've got to have a brand that you can recall throughout.
Got it.
Be attached to that memory.
So, but a lot of the examples that I've heard you talk about, and even the example that I showed you, is a TV commercial. Now, I don't know, in Australia, TV commercials are probably still a big thing. In the States, it's a little bit of a weird thing because there's a lot of people who no longer get broadcast. So a lot of it is streaming, and streaming is considered different than broadcast, even though it's really doing the same thing. But you're seeing a lot of brands being built here in the States. I would say like there haven't been that many brands that have been built over the past 15 years, but recently now we're beginning to see like Liquid Death or Duolingo or Elf, and a lot of them using nothing but organic social to sort of build their brand. How does that change, or how does that fit into your framework or into the neuroscience of things?
So if you're looking at communication, we have three brains. We've got a reptilian, we've got a mammalian, and we've got a neocortex. What people really need to understand is how do we consume information, or how do we unlock each of those? So reptilian brain is looking for either threat or opportunity. Opportunity looks at new, novel, something interesting. Does it get my attention? So you got to get attention. And if that's organic social, that's fine. If it's a paid ad, that's fine, but you've got to get attention. That's the first thing. Now, some people think attention is the entire game. It's not. That's where I got attention, but I didn't do anything with it. Then you've got the mammalian brain. The mammalian brain looks for, do I trust this piece of information, both subconscious? So this is looking for reference points, both in environment and the actual asset. Do I trust this information? And only if is it new, novel, or threat or opportunity, and it feels trustworthy, will it move through to the system 2 or the neocortex for processing? So when you're looking at if it's organic or if it's paid, it's nearly null and void. The same framework exists. How do I communicate effectively? Grab someone's attention, do something meaningful with it.
But the medium doesn't change anything in the sense that
it does.
I always give this analogy. Like I went to Walgreens and I bought athlete's foot medication, and I bought Tinactin. because as a kid, I grew up with the TV commercial, tough actin, tenactin, playing over and over and over again. So they spent billions of dollars over 3 decades on probably the most powerful medium for embedding a brand into a brain, right? Which is television. But now some people don't do television anymore, right? All the eyeballs are pretty much on social media, specifically organic social. That's the channel, right? Organic. Like when you
Why would you say organic? What's the difference between organic and paid when it comes to social? Just a little thing on it that says paid. It's the same creative. It's the same newsfeed.
Well, I'm just saying a lot of these brands are just using pure organic to build themselves up.
The difference with
organic, they take
organic
their best
and paid,
creatives organically and put some dollars behind them.
yeah, it is. The difference with organic and paid, organic, if you're looking at organic reach, that's typically an asset that people want to consume on their own behalf, or it feels like the algorithm is serving to you. So there's something about the asset that it's kind of like it is more, chances are I want to consume it. Paid is a bit more forced. So if you can get great organic reach, which some of these brands have done really well, going viral or whatever you want to call it these days, they've created an asset that people want to consume and share. And if you're looking at something that they want to share, if you're looking at Million Brain, Justin's found something. He thought it was funny. He thought it was cool. He's just emailed it to me or sent it to my DMs. It's coming from an associated trusted source. It's already validated. That is really, really different to this paid ad that just pops up on my screen. So this is where you're looking at also source of communication. If someone's messaging me a piece of content, I'm going to give it a lot more attention. I'm going to consume it, and then we can talk about it.
Wow.
But at the same time, I would say you take that piece that's gone viral organically and you put the dollars behind it, and you should still just amplify that same effect. More people are finding it, organically, even though it was paid, in their feed, and then they will be inclined to want to share if it is of the quality that people were sharing organically.
John, do you have any stories? Like, do you have any examples of like a case study that just?
I'm just going to go back to your story here, Justin, because I think I might be able to close a few loops for people. So going back to the neuroscience, understanding how memory forms is really important. So how does memory form? We have episodic memory and we have semantic memory. Episodic memory is one exposure, and that is, call it burnt into your mind, but that is just a snapshot in time. So that's episodic. Semantic memory is I need 3 or more of these episodic memories, and that memory will exist completely independently and create your own view of the world of that particular brand. So what you want is semantic memory. So you've been smashed with, I can't recall the brand you were talking about, Justin, that you've just bought at the pharmacy, but you've had tenactin. So you've had a semantic memory. You've got an association, a feeling, and a trust with this brand because you've been exposed to it so many times episodically that you recall. That lives independently. If I have another brand that you've never heard of, this is going to win every day of the week because you feel like you know it, you trust it, and you like it, and you'll pay a premium for it. The challenge with today's environment, it's so fragmented that you need so many more exposures, or you need a quality or depth of exposure to build a really nice episodic memory.
I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't hire you. Are you just like too expensive for most people? Like what's going on? Like my question is like, if what you're saying is true, if this neuroscience thing is true, then like what's the fun anymore? Like, okay, like you can predict, and like, so it's just a matter of like, well, we know the hero's journey works really well for a TV script, but that you could still have a lot of creative license. Is that all that's left then? Is like the sort of creativity license aspect of it?
Again, we're not the creative. We're here to create frameworks for creatives to really thrive and brands to thrive and give feedback along the way. Like, we are not the creatives.
But even if I were running a creative agency, I would totally like want to gut check all my creative work through you. Do you do that?
But that's what we do. And that's what we want to become a creative agency's best friend. So they can run their ideas past us. And again, we might have some going, oh, I love that. But have you thought about this principle? And they'll take that principle and they'll go, here's this idea, and that is phenomenal. Thank you. So we're just giving you territories to play in. To, if anything, we'll create more ideas off the back of it. So that, yeah, that's where we play. But for some others, that feels like it removes their creative license, or they've got someone marking their homework.
I'm thinking, Justin, maybe we make Genius Scouts like a franchise here in Los Angeles of Undivided, and we could start doing it for the agencies here.
I can think already of, yeah. I mean, what we do at Genius Scouts is not dissimilar. I mean, we're not a media company, but in terms of our approach to creative and brand, you know, and I know we're out of time, Jono, and I want to be sensitive to it. And at some point, I think we'd have to bring you back on, because I'd be curious to hear about how all of this actually plays out when dealing with somebody's personal brand, and whatnot. But I don't know. Is there anything you'd actually want to say about that really quick?
Look, personal brand is the same as any other brand. It's an association of feeling that I have towards a particular individual or object or service. So it's just like, what are my associations with that brand, and how do you, how do you build stronger associations to what you want to be known for?
But there's also
Kind of interesting.
Sorry, go on, Aaron.
I was going to say, it's kind of interesting, the idea that you can actually use science to measure, let's say, how charismatic or I don't want to say attractive in a physical sense, but attractive an individual is, you know, almost as a brand based on their content and the way they behave and the way they look and all those things, and how people are connecting to them.
Does that, I mean, that probably has something to do with it, and that you should need to take, I think, because a lot of the personal branding advice is very siloed. It's like, write like this, do this, use this hook, you know, but you very rarely see people going into like, well, how you sell affects the brand, how you know, do that, you know, how you talk or how you look even affects the brand. I mean, everybody knows that good looking women on LinkedIn will get a lot of engagement, but it's probably not the engagement that they want, right? And so, like, okay, how do they offset that? How, like, what should their strategy be? It's almost like what you're saying. It's not black and white. There's a lot of,
it's not. And if you're looking at personal brand, some people will be phenomenal in front of camera and appear really well. Others won't. They will deliver a great job if they're using, you know, static or text, because that's where they're really strong, and they can build their brand and associations via that vehicle, because they may not present as well on camera. Like, we're human beings. Our system one, again, subconscious, makes majority of the decision making. So as soon as I see someone on camera, you've already summed them up within 2 seconds. Do I want to continue?
Justin, I think you said you have a face for radio.
I do have a face for radio. So all of this you're giving away for free in your book, all of this knowledge.
Yeah, all of this. We go in depth to both the 12 principles that we see consistently in the framework that deliver, or they have the highest propensity of success. So what it is for my journey was, I wanted to reduce the chances of having assets that didn't drive outcomes, because that's not good for anyone. What frameworks do we have to increase our odds of being really successful with advertising?
But somebody could read this book and use it for other purposes, right? Sales, marketing, advertising,
presentations,
dating.
all of it. The more you understand about human behavior and how we decide, which is primarily in our subconscious, the easier it becomes to communicate and influence and persuade, whether it's sales, advertising, marketing. The universal.
Okay. I think I'd love to have, Jono, I'd love to have you back on where we can talk, just talk about this a lot more. You just dropped so many insights, like you always do. So many insights, so many things, like I just could have just paralleled off into all of these different areas. But I want to be very cognizant of time. And we just have a really quick lightning rapid fire round that we'd like to do with you. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
Right.
Jonathan, we're almost out of time. Before we wrap up, we have a quick rapid fire round for you. Just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. No wrong answers. If you want to elaborate on something, if it reminds you of something as well, you can feel free to riff on it as well. Ready?
Go.
Logic or emotion?
Emotion.
What's your superpower?
ability to learn.
A smell that instantly brings back memory.
Chocolate.
Chocolate. What's your favorite of the 12 hacks in your book?
Distinction bias.
Why?
It uses comparator. Comparator is incredibly compelling at getting people to move really fast. Contrast.
What mistake? What's a mistake that you're glad you made?
Going into partnership.
What's one everyday behavior most people don't realize is actually shaped by neuroscience? Or are all?
They all are.
What would
All
be the
habit.
most shocking to people, you think?
Most shocking behavior. All habits sit in subconscious, so that's your unconscious drivers. I think the most powerful thing we've got as humans is we can shape our subconscious, so you can be really deliberate with either getting up at a certain time, going to train, before it becomes a subconscious habit that you do. And if you're not going out and running at 6 a.m., you feel like something's wrong. So you can shape all of your habits. You've just got to be really aware of how to do that.
It's funny. I just said that to somebody recently. What is the most unforgettable ad campaign you've ever seen? Or heard of?
Most unforgettable ad campaign. There are so many. I don't know. For some reason, I've got Coca-Cola Christmas sitting there.
Okay. Was the Apple Think Different campaign success or failure?
Depends who you read and who you listen to. My view is it contributed to success.
Got it. If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a good answer. What brand would you love to rebuild from scratch right now your way?
There's probably several. Your audience may not be familiar with them. I love brands in sort of banking, insurance, finance that are always on, that have chances to bring really strong memory structures. So it's kind of brands that have fallen off the wagon a little bit or were big and declining. I love turning brands around.
Why in this entire conversation have you not mentioned the word AI once?
It's unnecessary because you've got AI is a tool and a really powerful tool to make you more effective. AI doesn't solve core problems or issues. You need to identify and understand what they are first. And again, the quality of the answer is determined by the quality of the question. We want to ask really good questions first before we start looking at solutions.
So neural networks and the neuro stuff you're dealing with are two separate things.
It is. Again, it's frameworks. It's how do we set things up for success. AI is tools to help accelerate either the speed of execution or joining dots. It doesn't solve key problems that you're looking for organizations.
What's going to change in the next 10 years in marketing and advertising?
Everything.
What's not going to change in the next 10 to 15 years in advertising?
People and consumers, how they are influenced and how they behave.
Thank you. And since Genius Scouting is about introducing new voices to the world, who is an artist or an innovator or a leader you think people should know more about? Who are you fascinated with right now?
Who am I fascinated with? I don't know. I love Dan Martell for many different reasons. But in terms of way of thinking, or if you're calling naturals for creative, Greg Logan is phenomenal. Yeah, he's really, really, really clever. Yeah, I'm probably a little bit obsessed with Dan Martell and have been for a while.
Got it. Is there anybody who is not as famous as Dan Martell? Somebody that like we might not, that people might not have ever heard of?
That I'm obsessed with right now.
Not obsessed, but like somebody like we should be keeping our eye on. It's okay if you don't.
Greg Logan would be one to watch.
Greg Logan. So, Jonathan, this has been really mind-blowing. Like, just so many insights dropped with every single thing you said. You know, Aaron, I was once on a podcast with Jono, and I actually took that podcast and I put it through Opus. And you know how it goes and it looks for viral content and it cuts it out. And it spat out 20 clips, and not a single one of them was of me talking. It was all Jonathan. It was all, it was all Jono talking. Aaron complains that it's like whenever he does that with me, it's always me. And so it's like, it's just a whole nother level of insights and stuff that are dropped here. And I would love to have you again on here so we can get deeper into the neuroscience stuff. When is the book going to be launched?
That's June.
June. Okay. June. And, where for anyone that wants to get in touch with you to hire you, which I think that there's going to be a lot of people after listening to this podcast, where can they find you?
LinkedIn's best for any sort of interaction. So yeah, LinkedIn, Jonathan Rolley, Undivided.
Jonathan Rolley at LinkedIn. Jonathan, thank you again for being here, for existing, and thank you to everyone listening.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for tuning in to the Genius Scouts podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes, and if you're ready to take your personal brand to the next level, visit geniusscouts.com.